and welcome to Are We There Yet? Market Scale's online video podcast series that explores the most exciting projects, companies, and organizations in transportation today. My name is Grant Harrell, and as your host, I'll speak with the voices of today's most exciting companies, truly learning what's at the cutting edge of transportation technology today. And speaking about the cutting edge, I'm very, very excited to speak with Orbit Fab today. And we're very fortunate to have their Chief Executive Officer, Daniel Faber, with us today to tell us about some of the exciting work that Orbit Fab is involved in. And so, Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. Hello, and welcome to Are We There Yet?
Thanks, Grant. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you. We've really been looking forward to our conversation today and really fascinated to learn more about this idea of gas stations in space. And I don't think that we could pick a more relevant topic. I know that gas stations, gas prices at the consumer level are very much on the minds of many of us throughout the world, but especially here in the United States. So I think a very timely topic of discussion today, and integrating, of course, the great work that you're doing in space with your gas stations in space. So really excited to learn a little bit more about that. I know that myself and you're probably included, as we all are paying quite a bit for gas today. I know it's hit about $5 a gallon in most places. And while I imagine that this could be the price of rocket fuel or satellite propellants, I imagine that satellites probably use a little bit different fuel than we do in our cars. And so would love to learn a little bit more about satellite propulsion, propellants, and these gas stations in space that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I wish gas in space only costs $6 a gallon. That'd be great. Yeah, it's pretty expensive up there, and the major cost is launching it and getting off the ground. But the kind of propellants that we use, hydrazine and xenon, they're not cheap at all, especially xenon, given the current economics and geopolitics and, frankly, the invasion of Ukraine. So things are expensive, but launch is expensive. Getting things to space is expensive. It shows you how valuable it is to have that perspective from orbit, that we do anything in space at all. And there are huge constellations of satellites, monitoring the Earth and communicating and everything else. They all have fuel on them because they need to stay coordinated, right? The moon and the sun is pulling on them. The Earth is lumpy. And so they need to use fuel just to keep coordinated in orbit, to get to new orbits and those types of things. And at the moment, they take all that fuel with them, right? You have a 15-year life satellite. You have to tow 15 years worth of fuel around. And you can imagine what that leads to, right? The goal is to not move your satellite at all. Everything is designed around don't move your satellite. No business model flexibility, no operational flexibility, no ability to go after new markets if they arise. That's the current state of the art. So we're trying to change that, turn it on its head.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like something that needs changing, and so glad that you and your organization are very focused upon that. You mentioned that satellites, are really stuck in kind of this single-use paradigm, and so that you have a satellite and technologies that are really designed to last for 10, 15 plus years, but really limited to the fuel that they carry with them within the launch. And so, would love to fitting within the theme of series, to learn about that specifically. So gas stations in space, are we there yet?
We are almost there. Orbit Fab, we put up our first fuel depot almost 12 months ago now. So it's been operating in orbit for 12 months. It's a relatively small depot. It's minimum viable product, right? We're a startup company. But our architecture involves fuel depots, just big tanks of fuel, and fuel shuttles to move the fuel from the depot to an operational satellite. So those are the pieces of the architecture we're building. So the next thing that we're launching is the first fuel shuttle, commission that in orbit, and that'll be able to make deliveries to the customers. At the same time, we also sell gas caps because satellites are not having the option to refuel. They're not designed to refuel. And so that chicken and egg, we had to break that. And the first thing we did was develop the gas cap. And so the US Space Force has now baselined our gas cap, our fueling port, on a number of their spacecraft. Commercial operators are adopting it too. And so we're seeing we're getting over that threshold where satellites will have the gas cap, we'll have the fuel shuttle, we'll be able to make those fuel deliveries. So we're just a couple of years away from making the first commercial fuel delivery in orbit.
That's incredible. Wow. Tell us a little bit more about that gas cap. So that's something that I think is pretty fascinating, and having kind of this universal gas cap that satellites and other technologies can utilize, in space, and how important that is to developing these gas stations in space. Can you tell us a little bit more about the gas cap and how exactly that works and why it's important?
Yeah, when we started this business 4 years ago, that was the first thing we realized. First of all, the first thing we realized is everyone really wanted fuel. We talked to satellite operators, and they said they would realize more than $1 million of marginal revenue for 1 kilogram of fuel, which blew our mind, because $1 million you're talking about $5 a gallon being tough. Right. And that's like $4 million a gallon. That's how much difference. And we know the launch companies. Right? We know it's expensive to launch fuel to space, but we can probably cut some good deals and get fuel to space for like $1,000 a kilogram. And so there's 3 orders of magnitude arbitrage there if we can build the infrastructure that actually lets us close that loop. So that's what told us there was a business. But then we looked at it, and there was no gas cap. There was no way to refuel satellites in orbit. The technology to like dock satellites together, that's been developed by DARPA and NASA, and you can now solve that problem. But everyone has to adopt a fueling port if they want to get refueled, or you have to have extremely complex and expensive robotics. And so the obvious solution was, let's make a gas cap and just offer it to everybody. So we're not going to make money off the gas cap. We built it. It's about yay big. It's got two fueling ports in it. You can just drop it into the design of a satellite and replace the fueling ports they have that they use on the ground. But the ones they have at the moment on the ground, they tie them off. They basically weld them shut, so you can't operate them in orbit. We have to design one that then can also work in orbit. So that's what we've developed now that's being adopted. So it's this small device that sophisticated gas cap, but really that's what it is. And we're hoping that gets picked up as sort of a de facto standard or something. We're prepared to almost give it away, because for us, the business is selling fuel in orbit. And so we want the gas cap just to be used universally.
Makes sense. Very good. Well, how exciting. Gosh, really developing the technology, from the ground up, I guess, literally and figuratively, but amazing, that it really starts there, in terms of solving the problem and then moving to the greater problem, and the solution of gas stations in space. You mentioned, that we're almost there yet, in terms of having these gas stations in space relatively available. You've demonstrated that, as you shared, through the mission. And so I understand that the Tanker 001 Tenzing is really the world's first operational fuel depot that was launched, as I understand, aboard a SpaceX Falcon June of this past year, and that you worked also within a very, very aggressive time frame. As I understand, you had about a 6 to 9 month window that you had to kind of make everything happen from the start of the project to hardware handover. Can you tell us a little bit more about this achievement and really why this milestone is so important within the development of your future gas stations in space?
Yeah, we're not afraid to do things quickly, but we need to balance that, do things quickly and reliably. But we closed our seed round, right? We're an early stage startup company. We closed our seed round. It was oversubscribed by about 30%. So we had a bit of breathing room. We found an opportunity to get on that launch very cheaply. And also, we have good friends that build spacecraft and things. We found an opportunity to get a spacecraft very cheaply as well. So we put those two things together, and we had a 6-month timeline to get to that launch. And so we just went for it. In the end, the launch slipped by a couple of months, so we got a couple of months of leeway. In the space industry, we call this launch chicken, where the rocket hopes the payload slips so that they don't have to admit that they need it, and the payload hopes that the launch vehicle slips so that we don't have to admit that we need it. In the end, we won the game of launch chicken. They slipped, and we got a bit of extra time, which was nice. So it was an 8-month development. But still, in the world of developing spacecraft, that's lightning quick. I mean, there's a very complicated systems. And there's no reset button, right? You can't go up there and fix a screw if you do it on loose. You have to get everything right. And so, that was a great program. It's now in orbit. It's got hydrogen peroxide in it, which concentrated up to 90% purity is very flammable. It's very aggressive chemical. So we had to do all the safety for that. We had to build our own tanks and everything and figure that technology out. Of course, the fueling ports, we had to fuel on the ground when you've got people around, which is probably the most dangerous situation. So we had to go through all the certifications for range safety for the launch site. It had to fit all of that into that, nominally 6-month program. And so, it was a huge undertaking. The team just really met the challenge head on. It was great. Absolutely.
Well, you have an amazing team. That's an incredible accomplishment. Just what a great way to demonstrate the technology and this concept through a mission itself. So congratulations, certainly to you and your team for that major achievement. You talked a little bit about friends in the business, and I've just have been really impressed with the partners, with the collaborators that you and your organization have worked with to make these amazing technologies possible. I understand too, just to compliment you a little bit, that your organization was the first ever to receive investments from both Northrop Grumman as well as Lockheed Martin, and as I shared, just have some amazing partners that you work with. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of your partners and maybe some of the exciting collaborative projects that you're currently working on?
Yeah, some of our big strategic investors, Munich Re led our seed round. Munich Re is one of the world's biggest insurance companies. Munich Re Ventures made the investment. They saw the risk posture of all of the satellites changing because there's satellite servicing, effectively tow trucks in space. This is when we started our business, there were 8 or 9 companies working on satellite servicing. Now there are more than 110 companies working on this, and that's just in 4 years. So it's been a huge increase. We realized that all these tow trucks are going to run out of fuel. They're going to have to throw away the tow truck and build a new one. Like it's a silly business model. Again, the amazing thing is you could even conceive that as a viable business model in space. It shows you the value of it. By providing them with fuel, they get to use their assets instead of 2 times. They get to use them 10, 20, 100 times, right? The economics make obvious sense. And so, just seeing the proliferation of satellite servicing companies. So we have a great deal with Astroscale, where they've purchased a ton of propellant, 1 metric ton for delivering geostationary orbit, which is a huge amount. We have the investments from Northrop and Lockheed. And then, of course, Munich Re, who they're the biggest insurer of satellites and rockets. And so they see the risk posture changing. We want to insure not only our operations, but we have forward contracts where we're forward selling this fuel to Astroscale and the like. And then we want to monetize that up front. So we wrap that in an insurance product to lower the cost of capital. Very integral and strategic partnership then that we have with them. So just so many different ways that we're working with Lockheed, so many ways we work with Northrop. And then Marubeni, the big Japanese conglomerate, also came in and made an investment. And theirs was very much a financial perspective. Like, this is a new industry. You're building part of the infrastructure. You get this off the ground. We want to hold 10% of that industry, right? We want to take a good stake in this long term. That's a great long-term financial partner to have. So we're just building up all the pieces that we need on the technology side, the finance side, the risk management side, all of that. So we're feeling really confident we can deliver like the whole solution to our customers on a very reliable basis. And that's what our customers want to see. And the customers respond to that, not just the commercial customers, but also the US government, which is a big market. And now we've just set up an office in the UK and looking at the European market as well. So bringing in more partners from other parts of the world is super important to us.
Yes, very much so. Those are some amazing partners to have and some really exciting projects. So really, really great to hear that. One of the projects, and going back a little bit into some of the early chapters of the organization, as I understand that your organization was actually the first private company to bring water to the International Space Station. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project and how that kind of led to some of the future projects and development with the company?
Yeah, we had an opportunity just when we founded the company, because I know the people at the International Space Station National Lab, and they run in parallel to NASA. They're separately funded by Congress to do research and commercialization on the space station. And so while the research angle, everyone's sort of used to doing research in space, commercialization of the space station and the space environment, it's tricky to find startups that are ready to invest in that. So they're there to facilitate that. And we talked to our friends there, and they were really excited by what we were doing and the long-term potential. And so they gave us the opportunity to fly to the space station, provided us with some astronaut time to do some tests. And we said, well, we want to pump some fuel, but we'll use water as the fuel. And at my previous company, we developed a thruster that ran on water. Like, it ejected water out the back to push you forward, superheated water vapor, basically. And so that was sort of the basic. Well, water is now a fuel. We'll pump water around. It's astronaut safe. That helps. And so we engaged with them, and similar to the way that we had a 6-month development program for Tanker 001 Tenzing, for the FURFI mission, for our International Space Station demonstration, we had a 4-month timeline. And NASA told us when they looked at it, like, if you take water to the space station and it gets out, if you have a leak, you can actually drown an astronaut. It can get on their face. They can't brush it away because the surface tension will just wrap it around. You can't scream for help because you're under an inch of water. And so it can be very, very dangerous. So they said, this is a catastrophic level hazard. And so we explained the mission. Okay, we're going to have lots of redundancy, and we're going to make sure that it's safe. And then, we'll pump it back and forth. And when we're done all the tests, the dynamics tests and things, we'll pump it into the space station and you can keep the water there. And, we'll deliver that to the space station. And they said, oh my God, you're going to plug your pumps into our water bus and you're going to blow up the water bus and we're going to have to evacuate the International Space Station. This is definitely a catastrophic level hazard. And so they threw the book at us. And so they said, 24 months, right? That's what it's going to take. And we said, no, there's a launch in 4 months. And a month later, we're like, okay, so this is our detailed design review. There's 60 people from NASA on the other side. And they're like, oh, this is an interesting idea. Like, here's a couple of problems. We'll see you again in 6 months. This will take you 24 months. We're like, no, we're halfway through the development program. It's been 2 months already. We ended up getting it through. Like, we built the relationships. We understood their concerns. We understood technically what they expected from reliability and safety, where they were prepared to shift what was a standard solution into something that might be a custom solution that still satisfied their needs. Our chief engineer is absolutely brilliant. He was able to sort of navigate that whole thing. So we certified it and got it ready to fly. It's a crew-rated piece of equipment. 4.5 months. That's what it took us, and it flew. So within 1 year of founding the company, we had our first tanker test bed on the space station. The second one went up a few months later. And we pumped the water between the two. That was successful, found a bunch of bugs, learned a lot, learned about pumps, learned about connections and interfaces, which led to all of our subsequent designs. And then, we were able to offload that water to the International Space Station and resupply them with water. And they're still drinking the water that we sent up, which is really cool. And now then they sent back our hardware to us. So we have it sitting in our lobby now after the engineers pulled it apart to figure out what had gone wrong and check everything. And now we have the hardware, of course, sitting up as a bit of bragging rights in the lobby.
Absolutely. How incredible. What an amazing project. And gosh, to work within that time frame, just really must have had the technology and the solution that, was able to push through in that quick period of time. So that's incredible. And just hearing, a little bit about the evolution of the technology, some of those early successes and how that, led to the success and demonstration through the recent launch, development of the gas cap, as you mentioned, as well, and just how all of this has really led up to where you are today. I'd love to learn, on kind of a high level, long-term perspective, what all of this means. So the gas stations in space, so that's now enabled through your organization and through future launches. Can you tell us a little bit more about, what this means for space travel and for the space economy in general?
Yeah, I could put that in the context of sort of my journey in the industry. When I was in undergraduate university, I decided the most important thing that could happen for humanity in my lifetime was to get people off Earth, to create a multi-planetary species. And that was something pretty exciting to work on. So I wrote down a list then of all the industries I thought could pay for the first permanent job in space. Because at the moment, the astronauts go up, they're coming back, and they know that, right? But if you live there, if it's home, you start fixing the things. Like, you have your spare time on the weekend, you invent new things. People are going to get more experience. It's going to create a real expansion of what is possible. And so from that list, we only had two things, was tourism and mining. And I decided I'd look at asteroid mining. And so fast forward past having had the opportunity to build a dozen satellites and start up a number of companies, we got to building up Orbit Fab. And we're building the propellant supply chain to build a bustling in-space economy that can support permanent jobs in space. But you can't get to permanent jobs in space without an economy, which needs efficient infrastructure. And it needs then all the applications on that. Eventually, you'll get exports and export jobs that are permanent. And then we'll start, having internal economy jobs. And the economy in space over the next 100 years, it will be bigger than the economy on Earth. Right? The opportunity for expansion is enormous. And every industry that's operating on Earth will start operating in space. But we need the underlying infrastructure. And that's what Orbit Fab is doing. So we have to build the propellant supply chain so people can move and bustle, because you won't get a bustling in-space economy without fuel. And to do that, we need a gas cap. So that's where we started on day one. So it really was sort of work down. How do we achieve this goal? What do I have to be doing today to be able to leverage our way into that? And so that's really what underlies Orbit Fab and why we exist.
That's exciting. How exciting. Gosh, to think of what that next 50, 100 years is going to look like. It's incredible. When you see, some permanent jobs in space happening, to where people are up there and researching and bustling around and living up there, on a more permanent level, when do you see that happening?
Well, my list, as I said, was tourism and mining. I've since expanded that. So I've added entertainment content, manufacturing, and there are companies now starting to do that. Tom Cruise is going to shoot a movie in space. And then his production company wanted to build a studio to shoot that movie and to do other things. And they've teamed up with one of the commercial space station providers to put that studio on the Axiom space station. And so you start to see these things. I think that before the end of this decade, we will have the first jobs in space to support tourists, because you can't do that with robots. You can't roll out the carpet, clean the rooms, cook the dinners, like fix the plumbing, all of those things that are very complicated or just require a human touch. And then similarly on the entertainment content side, once you've trained somebody to film in space, to get the lighting right, to understand how to take a shot when you're not standing on the ground and everything just floats, it's quite a complex thing. So those people are going to have specialist skill. You do not want to bring them back. You want to keep them up there for as long as you can incentivize them to stay in orbit. Effectively, this is their permanent job in space. I expect to see that before the end of this decade.
The end of the decade. Wow. Can you so tell us what's next? It's amazing to hear, of just the many accomplishments to date for the organization. I would love to learn, a little bit more. What are you really excited about today, and what's next for the organization?
So I described how we've got the first fuel depot in orbit, which is a small depot with hydrogen peroxide. And next step is to fly the fuel shuttle. So the architecture is depots and shuttles to take the fuel from depot to the operational satellites. And that shuttle has all the smarts. It's got to be able to do a cooperative docking. So the client is ready and prepared and holding attitude, like the right lighting, and you dock to it. Much simpler than grabbing something that's tumbling. But there's no product solution that I can just buy that off the shelf. So we're making that system, and we're trying to encourage our suppliers and partners to commercialize that, because it's just outside our core business. But we want to see somebody commercialize a rendezvous docking kit. So then you could build satellites that can cooperate, dock, assemble things, all this kind of activity. But for us, that means flying and commissioning that first fuel shuttle. So we're on an 18-month program to make that happen. Again, it's a timeline that most people in the industry think is impossible and or insane. And yet that's what our team believes in, and that's what we're working towards. So in 18 months, we should be commissioning that first fuel shuttle in orbit, and all of those technologies that other people can then just start to use to build their businesses.
Very good. Very good. Well, you and your organization seem to have an amazing ability to work within a very aggressive timelines and to when the pressure is high. So I have no doubt that you'll make that happen. I know that certainly as a result of today's interview, there's going to be a lot of organizations and individuals that are going to be excited to learn more about the incredible work that you're doing and are going to want to pursue, partnership opportunities. This will be featured, of course, at marketscale.com, today's premier video media platform. And so I know, a lot of outreach, I'm sure, that will come about as a result of this episode. Can you tell viewers a little bit more about how to learn more about your organization and explore opportunities to support your efforts?
Yeah, you can find out a lot on our website at orbitfab.com, and then follow us on LinkedIn. That's probably the place that we're most active. You can look for Orbit Fab. You look for myself, Daniel Faber, and love to engage there and sort of keep a conversation going. We definitely need good talent. We're definitely looking for good partners. We're looking for opportunities to build on this infrastructure, the killer apps. Like, what are the applications that are really going to make money? We're looking for partners in that area quite aggressively. So, love to engage with anyone that's watching this that's interested in those things.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you so much for that, Daniel, and really appreciate your time today. Was fascinating for me to learn a little bit more about the exciting work, and want how much we appreciate your time and wish you and the organization continued success. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Grant. Really great to talk with you.
You as well. Thank you. Take care.